Thank you so much for watching the time and for your really impressive speech. And I like the final remarks because unfortunately the situation is, as you described it, it's very complicated to preserve all these valued things. So I give the floor now to Professor Gilad Margalit, who is going to speak about Biodeutsche, Bio-German majority, and Almanci minority. I don't know what Almanci is, but I'm going to learn it. Acceptance
I'll explain it.
Or tolerance. Let me introduce you very briefly, Professor Margalit. Sorry? Yeah. So a brief introduction. He earned his PhD at the Hebrew University in 1996. Since 1997, he has been teaching modern German history at the University of Haifa. He is a Alexander von Humboldt Fellow, taught as a visiting professor at the universities of Mainz, Bremen, and Augsburg. His research focus is in various fields of the German past, post-war process, German collective memory of World War II, and commemoration of war casualties, as well as minorities in Germany. Among his publications, I only want to mention two, are Guilt, Suffering, and Memory. Germany remembers its dead of World War II, Nazi Germany, and the Gypsies. So there's three already. Thank you so much. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And as I promised, I start with explaining these terms. So the first one, Biodeutsche or Bio-German, is a term coined by the Green politician of Turkish origin, Cem Özdemir, to denote ethnic Germans. Of course, in a bit sarcastic way. The next term is a Turkish one, Almanci. Almanci means Germans. And this term is being used in Turkey as a distinction to define Turks as well as Germans of Turkish origin who are living in Germany from the native country population. This Turkish labeling of the German Turks reflects certain distinction that their very living in Germany has created between this diaspora and the Turkish society in the native country. Okay, so to what extent can we talk of the Biodeutsche acceptance of the Almanci and of the Almanci by the German and the acceptance of the Almanci by the German state and by the German society today? Are they really regarded by the Biodeutsche and by the various state organs as accepted members of the German community and as integral part of German society? In my paper, I would claim that the politics of the German state, as well as the attitudes of the average Biodeutsche toward the Almanci, resembles more an up-to-date version of the concept of tolerance toward foreigners than that of acceptance of other Germans. They are tolerated but not truly accepted. I would like to start with the presentation of the Turkish diaspora in Germany and its socio-economic and cultural profile. Then I'll discuss the attitude among the Biodeutsche public toward the Almanci, and finally, German politics vis-à-vis this minority and the affinity between the public opinion, politics, and the functioning of the state organs in matters Turkish. Along with the Russian speakers, the Turkish-speaking minority is the biggest non-German ethnic group in Germany today. It consists of 1.6 1.6 million Turkish citizens, in addition to about 600 to 800,000 people of Turkish origin who have now acquired the German citizenship. This is about 1/3 of the whole group. Most of the young cohorts in this population of Turkish origin were born and educated in Germany. The origin of this Turkish diaspora derived from the 1961 agreement of West Germany with the Turkish Republic, as you can see here, to import from the latter manual labor for the German industries, which needed workers. The shortage of manual labor had worsened in West Germany, especially after the building of the Berlin Wall in August 1961. This measure had driven the supply of relatively cheap manual labor from the GDR. Most of the Turkish workers came from villages in Anatolia. This is a picture of the first group arriving to the airport of Düsseldorf in 1961. Most of the Turkish workers came from villages, as I say. They had very low level of education. The vast majority of them did not master the German language and knew very little about the country they were heading to. The German government invited Turkish manual workers, as they were called Gastarbeiter, to come and work in Germany for a short, limited period and then return back to the home country. The condition that they were to return home was soon to be removed due to the wish of the German industrialists. In addition, the Turkish workers themselves did not originally plan to settle down in Germany, let alone to become Germans, but intended to return to Turkey after some years, during which time they would have saved a certain amount of money. This would enable them to build a house or to buy a shop or a truck or a tractor, and by so doing, they would improve their position on the socio-economic ladder in Turkey. However, as so often happens, the reality was rather different. They remained in Germany for much longer than they had planned at the beginning. Following the oil crisis of 1973 and the subsequent recession, the German government decided to put an end to hiring of a labor agreement, Anwerbestopp, and the German government enabled the guest worker either to return to their home countries or to bring their families and receive a specific sort of permit which would allow them to stay in Germany. It is important to emphasize that this permit was not to be regarded as a step toward German citizenship. As a result of this measure, the Turkish population turned from being one of guest worker, you see mostly men, into a salient minority of migrants, different in religion, culture, and mentality from the German majority. The Turkish minority had manifested some social and economic characteristics. According to their level of education and income, about 85% of the German Turks belong to the lower strata of the German society, in comparison with only 13% of the Germans. 85% of the Turkish citizens in Germany and Germans with Turkish origin of employable age are working, fully or partly. However, only 40% of the Turkish women of employable age in Germany are working. This rate is relatively low. The customs of Turkish parents of importing young brides speaking only Turkish from rural areas for their sons who have grown up in Germany made the German hope for a speedy integration of these families into the German surrounding very challenging. The first generation of Turkish working migrants tended to regard their residence in Germany as temporary before returning home to Turkey. Consequently, they have developed patterns of diaspora living which are different from the classical pattern of the community migrating to Canada and United States in the late 19th century and early 20th century. Such people usually assimilated in the second generation into the norms and values of the host society. Contrary to this traditional integration pattern, the Turks in Germany did not look for a new home, unlike the Eastern European Jews who arrived at Ellis Island before settling in the United States. Regarding the Turks, the country of their birth, their language, their culture, and their interest in Turkey still occupy a central place in their daily lives and consciousness. The modern media have facilitated the sustaining of connection with Turkey in a manner that former generations of migrants could not have imagined. For various reasons, the workers postponed the date they had originally set for the return to Turkey. However, in March 2012, last year, less than 1 year from now, the polls of Lilienberg Research International and Info Institute showed that 47% of the German Turks still intend to 47% of the German Turks still intend to return to Turkey at some time in the future. Three years earlier, in 2009, there were only 42% who nurtured such plans, and I'll talk later about the reason for this change. The majority of German Turks regard themselves more as Turks than as Germans. Polls of the same institution of March 2011 asserted that 1/3 of the respondents has lived for at least 30 years in Germany. Nevertheless, only 18% and only 23% of those between 14 and 29 years look upon Germany as their native country. 40% regard Germany and Turkey equally as their native country, and 39% regard Turkey as their native country. In some respect, this diaspora is an extension of the Turkish homeland. One could easily find in Germany representatives of all Turkish political and religious streams. However, their diaspora-like situation facilitates processes of change and assimilation into the culture and mentalities of their German surroundings. So, in spite of similarity or some similarity between the Almanci and the Turks in many respects, it would be wrong to deduce from the Turkish public opinion that it was the same as that of the German Turks. According to the findings of TS Emnit polls of 2008, the vast majority of the German Turks, 69%, feel as Turks. Also among those German Turks who have acquired the German citizenship, 47% still feel themselves as Turks and not as Germans. There is a clear correlation between the respondent level of education and his or her self-definition, while the ratio of Germans Turks without a high school education who still feel as Turks is definitely very high, 76%. The percentage of German with a high skill leaving certificate or with an academic degree reaches only 44%. But it proves that even among this limited stratum of German-Turkish upwards climber, those with the highest education level with regard to their ethnic community, almost every other person feels as Turkish and not as German. This group of Almanci academics is the one most willing to integrate into Germany and to assimilate more easily into the German norms and mentalities. Among members of this educated group, the dimension of emigration back to Turkey, but not to the villages in Anatolia, but to the metropoles, Ankara and Istanbul, due to difficulties in finding a job in the German market, today is very high. In 2008, the title of a report in Der Spiegel on the painful phenomena reads, "Young, Good and Unwanted." The unique character of the Turkish migration to Germany, together with the migrants' consequent experience of discrimination and rejection at the hands of some of the German population, are probably responsible for the fact that considerable part of the Almanci tends to regard themselves as Turks and feel rejected by the German surrounding. Now, Turks as victims of prejudice, rejection, violence, and murder. The Turks in Germany constitute one of the least popular non-German group in the country. You see the Schmiererei, Türken raus. The social distance and rejection rates shown toward them, as published in opinion polls, are relatively high and have remained constantly so over the last 20 years. An opinion polls published by Amnit in 1990 shows that Turks rank second only to the Gypsies as the most disliked ethnic group among Biodeutsche. In 1994, they were second place after the Arabs. The Arabs got 47, they got 36 of the German rejecting them as neighbors. According to Albus polls of 1996, 54% of the East Germans and 39 of those of the West Germans reject Turks as neighbors. During the next decades, this situation did not change drastically. The Albus polls of 2006 shows that 39% of the Germans still reject Turks as their neighbors. 52.3% of those polled rejected the idea of having Turkish person marry into their family. In 2011, young ethnic Germans were confronted with similar question and replied that 38% of them would not like to have Turks in their as their neighbors. Vis-à-vis such a constant German rejection toward Turks, one should emphasize here that a considerable share of the Almanci themselves also reject the very idea of intermarriage between their children and German partners. About 44% of the respondents expressed this point of view at various levels of intensity. One can conclude that a considerable part of both groups support segregation and mutually repel members of the other group. During the 90s, Turkish citizens fallen victim to 2 arson attacks by neo-Nazis in Mölln and Solingen, and about 10 to 12 people were killed. But the next chapter, the next milestone in the history is the 9/11. It seems that since the 9/11 and the consequent attacks by Al-Qaeda in Europe, the attitude of the German public toward the German Turks, now mostly labeled as Muslims, had deteriorated even more drastically than before. According to the findings of the public polls of Ansbach from September 2004 and May 2006, most Germans associate the word Islam with oppression of women, while in 2004 only 85 of the respondents associate the word Islam with discrimination of women. In May 2006, there were already 91% who did so, whereas in 2004 only 75% agreed with the statement Islam has been affected by fanaticism. 2 years later, in 2006, 83% agrees with this assertion. Even German Turks of the third generation are still confronting difficulties in integrating among Germans. They have already experienced exclusion as children in the streets, at school, in the queues for clubs and discos, and in the labor market. While only 20% of the Almanci claim that they have experienced personal discrimination in Germany due to the distinct identity, about 2/3 of the respondents of public polls conducted in 2011 said that the Muslims are a group which is discriminated against in Germany. Discrimination and exclusion belong to the everyday experience of the Almanci in Germany. The German state and the Almanci. Germany is a nation state that did not regard itself as a country of immigration until the late 90s. Its concept of citizenship, as incorporated within the principle of their old citizenship law of 1913, are grasped more in terms of origin and culture, in the sense of jus sanguinis, than in the terms of political rights derived from being born locally, the jus soli. This concept reflects the common perception among Biodeutsche, who should be considered as German and who should not. In the late 90s, the political elites in the country finally realized that due to the low fertility rate of the Germans and the subsequent aging of the population, Germany must become a land to encourage immigration. Only immigration could fill the demographic gap and rescue the country from the threats of enormous actuarial crisis and some other frightening implications of the shrinking population. One assumes that the Germans, as you can see from their priorities on the board, would have preferred highly skilled migrants from the Christian Occident, middle-class Britons, for example, Canadian, and not Muslim Orientals of the lower strata. But it appears that Scandinavian or people of English speaking are not in great hurry to move to Germany. However, the Almanci already there, and they probably not going to leave Germany very soon. Until 2000, the only way for a Turkish citizen to become German was by naturalization. However, to this very day, the German state conditions the acquiring of German. Well, I didn't mention here that in 2000, it's very important, the citizenship law was changed in a way that it contained more political element in the sense of the jus soli. Nevertheless, the German state still conditions the acquiring of German citizenship on the relinquishing of the Turkish citizenship, a stipulation that deters most Turks in Germany, as contrary to most Turks in the Netherlands, for example, from applying for the acquisition of the German citizenship. This condition does not hold in other EU states that allow them to retain their Turkish citizenship. Although the new citizenship law of 2000 include the principle of the jus soli, this is still retained. The law retained this stipulation, and every Turkish or every German or citizen of Turkish origin who got this citizenship should relinquish his Turkish citizenship when he arrived to the age of 20. However, a change in the legislation could not evoke an immediate change among the Biodeutsche public in his attitudes toward the new Germans. The concept of belonging to the community and polity in a nation-state is deeply anchored within the social and cultural self-understanding of many ethnic Germans, and the percolation of such new concept, one stemming from legislation into the public common sense, common awareness, will take a considerable time. Hence, Turks, like other foreigners who wish to be naturalized in the country and to be incorporated within its society, are expected to assimilate completely into the German culture and mentality. And even then, if they have an unmistakably non-German name and appearance, they would probably still be regarded as foreigners. The unwritten demand made the new Germans is much more than what was expected from migrants in Canada or in the United States. In light of the 9/11, and especially its German connection, the German state and the public started to regard the Turks as Muslims and as a part of a much bigger population that might function as an incubator for fanatic Islamist terrorism. This fear has contributed to strengthening efforts on the local, state, and federal levels to integrate Muslims into the German society. The best known of such efforts was the initiative of Wolfgang Schäuble, the Federal Minister of the Interior, in 2006 to convene a special permanent body of negotiation between the government and the Muslim population, the so-called Deutsche Islamkonferenz. However, even the public elite is internally divided on the issue of the status desirable for or otherwise desirable or otherwise of Muslims in Germany. I don't have enough time, but just to mention the reaction of the current president, Joachim Gauck, to his predecessor, Christian Wolff's dictum, Islam also belongs to Germany. I'll skip some pages to finish at time. Okay. I would like to conclude my talk with a highly disturbing affair that was revealed in November 2011. Between 2000 and 2006, a series of mysterious murders took place in Germany. The victims were 8 Almanci and 1 Greek. And later it became known that also 1 German policewoman. All were small merchants, all were brutally shot in the heads by the same weapon in broad daylight at their places of work, as you see here, a kiosk in Dortmund. The German media followed the Nürnberger Zeitung that after the 6 victims of the series, the owner of Doner Kebab kiosk in August 2005, and coined these serial murders as doner murders. You know, doner is what we call shawarma here in Israel. The German media was very hasty to pinpoint the suspects, Turkish drug dealers. This was also a central direction of the police investigation. The poor families of the victims had to confront not only the loss of their beloved relatives, but also such accusations. The investigation, the broad team, consists of about 400 policemen, but even if someone had considered it, the possibility that it was a terrorist hate crime was not seriously investigated. Only the suicide of the two male members of the neo-Nazi group NSU, you see here both of them, in Zwickau in October 2011, and the subsequent discovery of the revolver with which all the murders had been committed uncover the mystery as the Nazi racist hate crime against the law-obeying German Turks. This is the woman who survived. She is now going to trial. And in the before they commit suicide, the woman set fire their apartment, and then in the remains of this building, the police had found a CD in which they tell the story of what they have done, and here you can see also very disgusting caricature. It's written in German NSU, it's a National Socialist Underground, and here today, special offer, Doner Spilz. And you see that the victims are spilled by the, and here, 9 Turks erschossen. 13 suspects who helped the murders will be tried soon. Some of them had connection to the informants of the secret services, Verfassungsschutz, who should in fact have monitored and warned the authority and the public against neo-Nazi insurgencies. I wish to conclude my talk by sharing with you some troubling question. What can such a scandal tell us about Germany's attitude to the Turkish minority? As most of the papers were dedicated here to the question of acceptance of the Jews in today Germany, one could only speculate whether it could happen in Germany also with regard to crimes against Jews. How would the police behave in a case involving Jewish victims? Would the German media have dared in such circumstance to call such an affair the gefilte Fisch murders? I don't know. And however, this brings me back to the first claim. Even those Almanci who had acquired the German citizenship are not accepted as fellow Germans, let alone those who had not. In the German society, jus sanguinis is still more significant than the jus soli. Thank you very much.